I welcome everyone to my channel. And again, stories from life. A novel that will change your life. Martha Shields' right pointing arrow, hope for happiness. I don't want to, he said firmly. You must have at least something suitable. Hardly. I haven't had a need for evening dresses since I graduated from college. Maybe I have to remind you again that I haven't decided anything about work yet? She looked at him intently. There is a well-defined name for what you are doing. This is chantage. No, it's called to please the boss. His low, husky voice sent a shiver through her skin. And what do you mean by that? If you think giving me a job will give me complete control over my life. No, sorry, I didn't mean that. Let me try again. He took Claire by the hand. Please, Claire, come with me. I have a speech to make today, and I can't stand it. Come on, please. This simple request made Claire's heart clench. Jake Anderson hates performing in public. He seems to really need some friendly support. In addition, her new job, and therefore happiness, depends on him, and the least she can do right now is go with him to support him. I have a black velvet dress that I can wear with pearls. I think it will do for an evening dress. I'll be ready in 20 minutes. Perfect. Jake shook her hand, then smiled, pleased that he had gotten his way. If you need help with zippers, buttons, or anything else, feel free to call me. Claire felt uneasy at his ambiguous suggestion. To hide it, she muttered, dreaming is not bad. And, already passing through the door, she heard his soft voice behind her. How to know? The lights in the hall were dimmed slightly. Jake took the stage. Claire leaned back in her chair and glanced around furtively. She had never been in such a society before. Everyone here was the cream of the Denver high society. Claire had no doubt that each of those present was worth at least $1 million, except for her, of course. She felt like a stranger at this party. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, Jake said in a deep voice, and all her thoughts and feelings turned to him again. His speech was very brief. Without unnecessary rhetorical digressions, he introduced the new director of the Museum Association to the public. Claire patted politely along with everyone else as he finished and walked straight towards her. She still couldn't believe that Jacob Anderson had come here with her, Claire Eden. From time to time she wanted to pinch herself to make sure it wasn't a dream. Meanwhile, the floor was taken by a new director. Jake put his hand on the back of Claire's seat and moved closer. Well, how did I manage? Claire turned but couldn't say anything. He was sitting so close. And she felt like she was drawn to him like a bee to honey. You just have to raise your head a little. Here she had to mentally pull herself up. She shouldn't dream about Jake Anderson. Nothing good will come of it. Did a great job. I don't know what you meant by saying that you can't stand speeches. It looked like you were born a speaker. Jake just shook his head. Listening out of the corner of her ear to the speakers, Claire tried to remember everything she already knew about Jake. And she discovered that she knew almost nothing, except that he was born on a ranch in Colorado, not far from the town of Pony. Yes, Jake also said that he and Alan loved to ride around their ranch. She frowned. He grew up on a ranch, that is, he grew up as a cowboy. Good is not enough. From Claire's point of view, nothing could be worse than cowboys. And at one time she was determined not to let them near her. Claire looked at Jake's profile. No, Jake can't be a cowboy no matter where he grew up. He doesn't wear jeans, boots or cowboy hats. He doesn't drive an old pickup truck. He does not smell of manure. And during dinner he does not talk about raising cattle. She turned away with a grim smile. Jake Anderson is a cowboy? Fine. In this case, bears roam Wall Street. It was about 10 o'clock when Jake helped her into his Jeep and got himself behind the wheel. I hope you are not tired. Claire shook her head. I slept until almost noon. We were going to have dinner. Remember? I think we still have to finish our conversation, don't we? That's it. Great. Where are we going? To me. Claire died. To you? It will be more convenient for us there. And no one will interfere. Doesn't interfere with what? He shot her a quick glance. Discussing tax issues. What did you think? Mr. Anderson, I would like to clarify something. I'm not going to sleep with you for this job. This is not my style. Stopping at a red light, he turned to her. If you had decided to sleep with me for a job, I would never have hired you. It's not my style either. If I take you, it will be only because your candidacy will seem to me the best. Claire nodded, inwardly glad that at that moment the green light had come on and Jake was back on the road. Then a conversation about tax laws began, which completely captured Claire. So, talking, they went up to the door of his penthouse apartment. Claire stopped in the middle of the living room, breathless with delight. The decoration of the room was like from the cover of a fashion magazine. What do you think? Jake asked. It's just great. Do you really live here? It's even too great and what? And somehow it doesn't look like you. Jake looked around the luxuriously decorated room, as if he had seen all this for the first time since he furnished it. Or more accurately, since Melissa beat her up. Of course, it didn't look like him. It was the setting for the woman he had almost married 3 years before. He did not change anything in the apartment simply because he never paid much attention to the decoration of the rooms. When I was at home, I spent most of my time in my office or bedroom. And all these living rooms are needed only for receptions, of which he has had few lately. He watched Claire caressing a ceramic vase, which he himself had never touched in his life. What would you change here? She awkwardly smiled back. I'm not a designer. You have seen my apartment. I never pick anything special. When I need some furniture, I just buy what I like. On a regular seasonal sale. You have a very nice apartment. Claire smiled. At least I feel comfortable in it. Jake helped her take off her coat and escorted her into the dining room. The housekeeper had already brought them supper. Jake had an elderly couple working to look after the apartment and cook the food. Jake rarely saw them, except when guests came. Jake hardly felt the taste of the dishes. Although all his attention was on Claire, who was trying her best to convince him of her experience and competence in financial matters. He did not hear half of what she said. All day he pondered his decision. He stared, fascinated, at the black velvet dress that hugged her breasts so well. Is it really possible to feel jealousy for a simple piece of matter? What a delicious dinner, Claire said. Thank you, Mrs. Sanchez. And please thank Mr. Sanchez for making everything so wonderful despite the late hour. Thank you, Mrs. Sanchez. And please thank Mr. Sanchez for making everything so wonderful despite the late hour. Maybe you can help wash the dishes? The housekeeper almost dropped her plates in amazement. No, ma'am, she muttered, embarrassed. We have a dishwasher. Claire nodded, and Mrs. Sanchez reached for Jake's plate. He stared in surprise at the bitten piece of cherry pie. What else he ate Jake couldn't remember if he wanted to. With an effort to brush aside the intrusive and forbidden thoughts, he turned to Claire. Would you like to see the view from the terrace? Curiosity lit up in Claire's eyes. With pleasure, they went out onto the glazed terrace. Jake watched with a smile as Claire gasped and admired the Denver lights and the Rocky Mountains. To tell the truth, Jake chose this apartment only because of the great view. And I was glad that Claire liked it here. So they have even more in common, which means he has one more reason to be happy with his decision. Jake smiled to himself. Needless to say, more than anything in the world he now wanted to hug Claire so that she gasped no longer at the sight of the city lights. How long are you going to marinate me like this? She finally asked. He did not immediately understand what was at stake. So you want to know if I'm hiring you or not? I did everything I could. I told you everything I know. What else can I do to convince you? Jake smiled. This work is yours. She beamed so brightly. A child for Christmas. Is it true? I'm offering you a position as Vice President of Pony Investments. You will be in charge of all accounting. Her eyes widened. Vice President? I didn't even hope. I was counting only on the position of an economist, I know. But you made a big impression on me with your innovative ideas. Here Jake called out such a salary that Claire had to grab onto the railing to keep from falling. Are you joking? He shook his head. But isn't there anyone among your employees who could take this position? He shrugged. Alan used to be in charge of accounting. He had an assistant, Jim Gordon. But we never discussed the possibility of him taking Alan's place. As far as I know, Jim got the highest place he deserved in the pony, and he seems to be more than satisfied with it. Don't you want to give him at least a chance? Agree that taking the boss from the side is not the best way out in such a situation. Jake made an impatient gesture. I need you. Why? You haven't seen me in action yet. I know you will take good care of my money. She raised her hands to the sky. Well, where does such confidence come from? You will understand everything when you hear my second sentence. Jake knew what he was saying was incomprehensible, but he wanted to get it over with as soon as possible. She narrowed her eyes. Which proposition? But Jake shook his head and held out his hand instead of answering. Let's finish the first one first. Do you agree? Yes, but I can hardly control people. I have too little experience. I can't believe I have to coax you into a position that would cut each other's throats out for half the economists in Denver. Especially when you remember that it was you who asked me for a job. She tossed her head proudly. Yes, but I did not expect to immediately turn from an ordinary economist into a vice president of such a company. You don't like the job title? Great. To be continued. If you liked the video, subscribe to my channel and press the bell to nothing don't miss.